Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm so excited. Today we have Becky Eichorst with us. And Becky is a financial coach, and she's the owner of Family Wise Financial Coaching. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Thanks so much for being here, Becky.
Oh my gosh, thank you. This is like an honor. So thank you. And I think it's going to be fun.
I
So
think so too, especially because you have a case study right here with you. My listeners know that I'm super transparent, and this is right up my alley about money. Partly because I am not paycheck to paycheck, but nearly, and I do still have a lot of debt, the student debt and things like that. So, yeah, money is definitely something, and we're not often very comfortable talking about money, are we?
no, but I will say like you're normal. A lot of people have that issue. So like you're not rare, that's for sure. So don't worry.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right? Why, like, money is such a taboo subject. Why do you think that is?
Gosh, I think it's because it's so entwined in our lives and like we use it every day and it can bring up so many emotions. So like it can be shameful depending on like what you've done, right? Like if you've had secret purchases and you just did it once or twice and then it just keeps adding up and then you're scared to tell your spouse or something, or it can be extremely overwhelming because it's similar to like losing weight. Like I don't know, it just keeps adding up slowly and then you have to step on a scale, and so you just choose not to step on a scale. So it's kind of similar to weight loss where you don't want to look at the numbers. You just kind of just wing it and make do and scramble when you need to. And
Mm,
yeah, so there's a lot of negative, I'd say, emotions that are tied with money, and I think that's where it gets a bad rap.
okay, got you. So, well, I would love for you, this is how I usually start off all of my guest podcast shows, for you to share about why you became a financial coach and a little bit about your background and what brought you here.
Yeah. So it kind of started back when I was a kid. So growing up, I had two hardworking parents, and they just really didn't have much to show for it. So they worked really hard, but they struggled with handling their money. So they kind of watched where it went instead of being proactive and budgeted. And as a kid, I watched them fight a lot. I watched our house get foreclosed on. I watched them go into bankruptcy. And these terms I didn't know as a kid. I just
Mm,
saw the stress on my parents. And then eventually they got a divorce. So I knew early on as a kid, I didn't want that for my kids and my family when I grow up. So, but then you fast forward a bunch of years. I graduated college with a master's in biomedical engineering. And that's a great degree. However, I racked up $100,000 of debt, student loan debt, during that. And so I moved out with my husband, who was in Tucson. And like during that grace period, I bought a brand new car and I just did things that seemed normal because I wanted to start my life. And so I racked up even more debt. And finally, the grace period ended. And me and my husband, we just were newly married. And we have this, oh my gosh, moment on the couch where we have two decent jobs, but we don't have enough to cover the bills at this point because the payments were so high. And so I like going back to how money emotions are, like I felt the shame bringing all that money into, or all that debt into our marriage. And we didn't know how to talk about money because we're newlyweds. And then, so thankfully, like I didn't want the same fate as my parents. So, and I'm a little more proactive. So I was like, okay, we need to do something. Like, let's read a
mm,
book, do something. Like, I need to get on a plan of some sort. So we found this guy named Dave Ramsey. He's a financial guru, but he wrote a book called Total Money Makeover. I took his course. Well, me and my husband did. And basically, we got on a plan. So we started budgeting. We started paying off debt. And during that time, I had this huge like transformation where it's like I went from feeling shame and overwhelmed and not knowing how to talk finances with my husband to, okay, I feel more confident with money. I feel like I can communicate great with my husband because we're aligned on our goals. And it was so empowering that I started this new passion, basically, where I'm like, okay, nobody talks about finances. I had nowhere to turn to when we first started. So I just want to help other people. So I kind of like, while I was working as an engineer, I taught Dave Ramsey's course, FPU. And then I took some courses on financial coaching. And then I had my daughter. And that was basically my tipping point where I didn't want to drop her off at daycare anymore. And I was tired of my engineering job because it didn't bring me joy. So that's when my husband got a new job, we relocated, and I never went back to engineering. So that's where Family Wise Financial Coach was born. But it's just been an awesome journey. I learned a lot, but it's a journey that I love sharing because it got me to where I want it to be. So I get to stay home with my kids and I get to help people with their money and help them achieve their goals that they want to achieve. So I feel like awesome, content, and I love talking about it. So that's another reason why thank you for having me on.
I love that. That's great. So was it really just thinking about, some of our listeners may be thinking about, their job is okay as well. And, that's where I was like, yeah, it's okay. It's fine. But yeah, it's not bringing me a lot of joy in what I was doing. So was that a big, you know, something really hard to do for you to shift careers, or was
It
it?
was scary. It was scary because, we were we had two incomes at the time. And at that point, we're relocating. So I know nobody really in this new location besides family. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I even going to get my name out there? How am I going to start this business, which I have no business degree? So I was very fearful. I didn't know how to make a website. There was a lot to learn. And so, yeah, it was really scary, but my husband was very supportive. And I knew in my gut that I wanted to be home with my daughter, especially when she's little. I wanted to make those memories with her and not have to drop her off. And so I knew I wanted to do this. It was just a matter of how do I do this? And then once I developed a plan-ish, there's only so much you can plan. But once I developed a plan, I was like, okay, we're doing it. This is it. I'm switching careers and I'm not looking back. So it was scary, but it was worth it.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, you have to get to a point where you just don't want to live that other way anymore. And then you're going to make the site, like you said, it's scary and you don't have it all figured out, but it's important enough for you to make that switch.
Yeah. I feel like if it's something you value, then make it important. I've learned a lot just growing up because I was a people pleaser and I still am. It's just naturally in me to just say yes to all these other people and say no to me sometimes just to help other people. But there's something about knowing what you value and sticking to it because it really brings you that contentment. You're not just happy during the moments. It's like, okay, even after this podcast is done, I get to go hang out with my kids and my husband and just enjoy the day. So it's awesome.
Yeah, well, that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So next, when we were communicating back and forth through email, I noticed in your email signature, you say, stop worrying about money and start focusing on what matters most. So I think this is a big question, but if you could share a bit about how can we do that? How do we stop worrying about money and start focusing on what matters most?
Yeah. And that's really people that call me that they don't call to say, oh, I want to learn how to budget. Like, they don't call me for that. They're calling me because they're stressed and freaking out about their money, and they're living paycheck to paycheck, and they just want something to show for it. They want to start achieving their goals. So, like, I get that all the time. And so I would say, like, to stop worrying about your money, you first, and I know this is going to be hard to hear, but you first need to, like, make a budget because it's kind of like stepping on a scale. Like, you have to know where you are. And so you kind of have to put that fear aside. And I get it. It can be fearful if you haven't ever budgeted or you don't exactly know where all your money's going. But that's kind of how you get that snapshot of where you are. So then at that point, you know if you have an income problem or if you have an overspending problem, or you know that, like, after you pay the bills and your groceries and budget, like how much you want to do, like to go out to eat, things like that, you might have extra money left over. And I mean, if you aren't budgeting, you can't put that extra money towards the things that matter to you. And like, ultimately, if you're not budgeting, then it just kind of gets spent, and that's where people are living paycheck to paycheck because they're not being proactive, I would say, with their finances and trying to build the budget before they even spend their money. So I would say, if you want to stop worrying about your finances, the first thing you have to do is budget. And I know that can be a very negative term in a lot of people's eyes. They're like, oh, budget. Like, there's no fun in budgeting. Like, you always have to say no. And it's like, as a coach, I say it helps you say yes to the things that are important to you. So you kind of have to flip it around. And I guess that is a mindset that some people have to get over. It's like, because maybe their parents budgeted. And so as a kid, they heard, no, it's not in the budget, no, and they're scarred from it. And some people think budgets are like fun suckers. And it's like, really, if you start budgeting, you know where you're at, you know if you have an income problem, and you can just start fixing the issues that you see in your budget and tweaking and slowly making it work for you and your life. And you can start putting money towards the things that you value. So maybe you are spending a lot on some subscriptions, I don't know, like Netflix and Hulu and things like that, when really you care about health and you want to buy more organic and you just can't figure out how that works in the budget. Well, you might need to, tweak it a little bit, maybe take away some of those subscriptions so that you can buy, the protein that you want, or the organic produce that you want. And it's just, budgeting helps you. It's like a puzzle. It helps you figure out where you want your money to go so that you can put it towards the things that you value. So it's kind of a magical tool for me. I know a lot of people don't like budgeting, but it's definitely the first place to start. And then I would just say, talk to your spouse, and if you're married, and make sure you're aligned on your goals, because that's the other thing, is like, first you budget, and then you need to make sure you're aligned on your goals so that you guys can work together and achieve those goals as like a family.
I love that. And I think it's true that budget has, like a negative and lots of
Yes, it
negative
does.
cloud over it. And I know myself in the past, when I was living alone, I had all the, apartment expenses and everything, and I was trying to budget, but I think I had more of an income problem than anything. But yeah, like I could never stick to a budget ever. But I love the way how you're reframing it though, that, it's not saying no, it's just making choices to say yes to what you love and what you value. I think
Yes.
that's probably the key right there for, especially for me and maybe for others who say, oh, it's like, you feel like you're saying no all the time, and that can feel like sad and down and not fun. But if we
Yeah.
just switch that focus, I really like when you said that. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, you got to ask, like, what you want in life, and then look at your budget and figure out how to make it work for the things that you want. Definitely.
I love that. Okay. So then the other thing is the overspending issue.
Yeah.
Which I shared just before we started recording. But yeah, I think that's probably me too. Well, in the past it was. I think I've gotten much better, after a few lessons, you kind of learn.
Mhm.
I'm slowly learning. But yeah, it's so easy to be tempted by things. And then when you have plastic as well, it
Yes.
just goes there. But yeah, can you talk to us a bit about that overspending and
Yeah. Yeah. Overspending is, I mean, there are people that you're just a natural saver or you're a natural spender. Like it's just in us. It depends on how you grew up. So for me, I'm a natural saver. So sometimes, it's hard for me to spend, which is another problem because it's like when you have the money and you want something, you should be able to buy it. Um, but my husband compliments me because he is definitely the spender in our relationship. But like the thing to help with overspending is definitely budget. That would be the first thing, of course. Like try to stick within that budget and make it realistic. Make sure like you're not saying, okay, I'm going to start budgeting. So we're not going out to eat at all this month. When before you were going out to eat like every night or something, like make sure it's realistic because then you are going to overspend and you don't even mean to. It's just you didn't budget for the things that you want to do and you weren't realistic. But then another powerful tool to help with overspending, because again, like what you just said, plastic is so easy. You don't really know how much you've spent. Like I've done it at the grocery store where I'm pretty good at knowing what I need to buy at this point. It's pretty routine. But when I swipe, it doesn't even trigger how much I just paid. Like she tells me the total, but I just swipe because I have other things on my mind. And then I just go to the car, pack the kids up, and it's like, okay, next. And I don't even know what I spent. So if you find yourself overspending in certain categories, like on your budget. So if it's restaurants, that one's a big one that I get all the time with my clients. That's why I always go back to it. But when you're overspending, another powerful tool will be cash. So you could tell yourself, okay, I'm just going to do cash for restaurants. Like I don't need to do all the cash for like groceries and things like that, but I do know that I overspend on restaurants. So I'm going to tell myself, okay, we'll go out to eat once a week, let's say, as a family. And so you figure out how much you spend typically. And so I would take out cash for that month on how many times you think you're going to go out to eat. And then that's it. Like you have the cash and you have a visual. And so you can ask yourself, like, especially towards the end of the month, depending on how often you've been going out to eat, you look at your wallet and you see how much cash is left. Maybe you've been stingy. So yeah, you can totally go out to eat with your family and enjoy. Or you have been going out to eat a little more and you don't have as much left. And it really makes you choose like, okay, maybe we don't need to go out to eat because I know the extra money that I found in the budget is going to go to like a down payment on a house. So we're just going to get creative and maybe buy a treat, but make dinner at home. So
yeah.
cash is a really powerful tool for overspending. That's for sure.
That's great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've done that at times in the past, but then, you do it for a month or maybe two, and then you just stop. You go back to
I,
your old habits.
Yeah, because habits are so hard to break. I mean, it's a habit, and there's a trigger that happens with a habit, and it could be a good habit or a bad habit. I mean, for me, like I tend to become a spender when I'm exhausted. Like if my kids didn't sleep the night before, I know that when I'm tired, I'm going to definitely go to Starbucks for a coffee and probably a piece of banana bread. I'm going to like buy a couple more things that I wouldn't normally buy, but it's just because I'm tired. So I know that that's a trigger. So it just depends on what your trigger is.
That's funny you say that because also I have a nutrition background. I was a dietitian for about 10 years. And also, when you're tired, you don't have enough sleep, well, the hormones in your body go out of whack and you're craving the high sugar, the high fat, high carb
Ah,
things the
that
next
is
day too.
interesting. Well, that
So
makes sense.
yeah, so we can see how it actually can fall over into your finances and your money as well. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so we're talking about budgeting and making financial plans to become debt free.
Mm.
And I think I read on your website as well, Family Wise Financial Coach, that you guys became debt free within 30 months. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
So like
Yep. So we
how
paid off
much?
$130,000 in 30 months. Yep.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It took a lot
tell
of work.
me, tell me, was it painful?
Yes, it was at times. We, I would say we got to the point where we were freaked out enough when my grace period was done and we didn't have enough to pay the bills. That was definitely a scarring point, and we didn't ever want to be embarrassed where we were late on payments and we just couldn't pay for things. So I think that was a driver that fueled us to pay down the debt. Um, but it was hard. I mean, I can't lie about that. But it was worth it. So like the hard parts were when we're budgeting and we want, as much money as we can to go towards the debt. It was hard because we were younger and all our friends and family are getting married at this point. And we're in Tucson and most of my family is in New England. And so like we would have to buy plane tickets every time. And so it could get costly quick. So we had to make tough decisions on, what weddings were important to us that we wanted to attend and which ones weren't, because we just couldn't go to all of them and keep going with paying down our debt. So I'd say like that was really hard. But the thing that motivated us, thankfully, was like my student loans. There were so many little ones that we'd pay one off, like a $2,000 one, and then we'd celebrate somehow. Like maybe we just got a bottle of champagne, drink it that night, and then the next day we just keep going. Like, so we made sure we celebrated each win that we had, but it was a long journey, that's for sure. But thankfully, I would say the other interesting point about it was we didn't have kids yet. So that made it a little easier. And then my husband was in the military, so he would deploy. And so it would just be on me to feed myself. So there were different ways that we were blessed with to pay off that debt. But it was not easy, that's for sure. It was hard.
But it was something that was important to you, right? That we spoke about earlier. So
Yeah, because in that book, Total Money Makeover, he made you think like, okay, all these payments that you have, wouldn't it be nice to have all those payments back in your control? So if you've got that $400 car payment and, we had $800 a month of student loan debt, it's like, oh my gosh, that's $1,200 that we're just paying. Wouldn't that be nice if we could just have $1,200 a month to put towards X, Y, and Z? I mean, so I guess that was the other mindset for us, was like, we just want to have that money back into our control because it's our money. So
exactly. Yeah, that's right. So then with the extra money, maybe it's getting in a step further, but then would you invest that? Is that what the next step would be? Yeah.
So yeah, we did follow the Dave Ramsey plan. So after we got out of debt, we made sure that we had the fully funded emergency fund, which was like 3 months expenses, just in case one of us lost a job, that we wouldn't go back into debt. And then
So you did
go
that
ahead.
after you paid off the debt.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we had a small emergency fund for like I don't know, the tires that you needed to change out, or if a washing machine broke and you needed to buy a new one. So we had a small one, but we made a much bigger one once we got out of debt, because again, we had like $1,000 to put every month towards an emergency fund at that point. So it's a little easier once you knock off the payments to really focus and save towards the things that you want.
Okay. So are you saying it would be kind of difficult to, because that's kind of where I'm down. Okay, do I save or do I pay debt? You know, do I do both at the same time? Like it's kind of not clear.
Yeah, and that's hard. I mean, I would say, especially right now, it's hard because we're still in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, we are starting to see light at the end of the tunnel, but I don't know if there's going to be businesses that go out of business. And so what I'm telling my clients is, if you feel as though your job is in jeopardy, like especially before for the restaurant business. I mean, if you were a waitress or any type of employee at a restaurant, I mean, it was a tough time, and it still might be for some locations. But so if you feel like your job is in jeopardy, I would say stop paying extra on your debt, honestly, and just beef up that emergency fund just in case you lose a job, because I don't want you to go into more debt because you were trying to pay off a debt. So yeah, kind of assess your life right now. And if you don't feel secure, then just beef up that emergency fund. And worst comes to worst, if life turns out fine and you never lost your job, you can put that extra money towards your debt. But it's a tough time right now in the middle of a pandemic. So
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay, great. Okay, so is there anything else here that I wanted to ask? Not specifically on the money discussion, but some regular questions I ask, because I'm also about trying to help people, reconnect with themselves, find joy, be happier, and like you talked about being the people pleaser. Yeah, totally. Here too, a lot of women I think are. So it's kind of breaking away from that and listening to yourself and what do you actually like to do instead of not doing everything for everyone else. So just what are some things that you love to do?
Okay. So there's some simple things,
Yeah.
especially as a mom. It's like I love a hot cup of coffee. I mean, I don't know how many times I've had to, like, I left my coffee on the counter and I had to reheat it in the microwave. And then I forgot sometimes that it was in the microwave. And so I love I bought a Yeti cup. Like, it just keeps it warm, because that's just one simple thing that I deserve. Like, as a mom, I should be able to get a nice hot cup of coffee. So like, I enjoy that. I enjoy reading. Like, I like fiction, I like nonfiction. I mean, self-help books. I like all those things because I love learning. And so I love learning with my daughter. And I love just watching documentaries. I don't know why that brings me joy, but learning definitely is something that I love to do. And then cooking and baking. And it's kind of special. Again, being a mom, I get to start having my daughter join me. And so, like, we just did a virtual cooking class for her. It was like a 3-week series, and it was all about clean eating. And it was awesome because I got to introduce her to, like, putting chickpeas in like a dip, which I would have never thought of. And then she loved it. So I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like, because health is like an important thing for me. And so I love like teaching my daughter to do that. And then just walking. I love walking. I mean, we have a treadmill in the basement, but when it's nice out, I love walking outside and just getting fresh air and having peace and quiet for a little bit, especially as a mom, because it's crazy most of the time.
Yeah, I
So.
can relate to a lot of those things. That's awesome. So you like the, the calm moments and the quiet, and or you can probably just be with you and
Yeah, I'm introverted. So I mean, I love talking. I love talking to clients and doing like podcasts, but I love refueling by being quiet and taking a time where I don't have to talk and I can just, whoo, yeah.
Yeah, totally get you there too.
Yeah.
So is there one big message that you would want to share with the world? Say it's your last day. What
Whew.
do you want to share? I know it's a
Oh,
big one.
that is a big one. Okay, one big moment. Let's see.
Your last message to leave.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, okay. So I would say celebrate the small wins. Like I kind of talked about it before with finances. So obviously with finances, celebrate your small wins, but even in life, like life is hard. I mean, it's really hard and you're always learning and you have hurdles that come along that you have to jump over and obstacles that you have to try to figure out, especially as a parent. I mean, there's so many things that could go wrong. So I really think celebrating small wins is a big one. And then because life is so hard, I would say give yourself grace because I love to learn, but I screw up all the time. And it's like, okay, that's okay. Like I tried. I'm going to give myself a little grace and then I'm going to try again. Because like I said, life is hard, but we can get through it, especially leaning on your community. So celebrate the small wins and give yourself grace as you're going through life.
Love that. Thank you. And it's
Yeah.
true when I often think, when I ask these questions, what do you love to do and things like that, the last few guests that I've had, they always mention little things, as well, like, your coffee. But it's just those little moments that bring you joy that, they add up to, a joyful life.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because we'll remember the big things, but and that will make us happy. They'll leave like happy memories, but it's like what brings you contentment? Because like happiness and contentment, that's different. Like you can be happy in the moment, but are you a content woman? Like, do you love your life? Are there things that you love about your life? And you don't have to be happy all the time, but it's like what's going to bring you contentment?
Yes,
Yeah.
and finding those small moments every day or do
Yep.
something every day to bring that in. Yeah, that's
Yep.
great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, um, there's something else that I probably should have brought up earlier. This is usually when I'm wrapping up, but just thinking about the budgeting thing and working towards those goals and how I mentioned how it's difficult to stay on a budget. Well, I think what can help is having a community or a coach that you're accountable to and someone who's following up with you on a regular basis is how, like, same as in when I was a dietitian, when I did nutrition coaching, like it is the constant follow-up that's going to help you stay more focused on your goals,
Yes.
right?
Yep. Definitely. Yeah. Having that accountability partner, whether it's like a friend, your spouse, a coach, like it doesn't matter. That's really what helps you stick to whatever goal it is. Like even when you go and you work out, if you want to do like, if you're trying to train for a marathon, usually have like a running buddy or someone that's like, hey, like, how are you doing with your running and everything? And you just need someone to help you along the way because you're really not supposed to go through life by yourself. Like, make sure
No.
you have that community because it's your friends, your family, a coach. That's what's going to drive you to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, exactly. And staying focused on those goals. It's like I
Yes.
was telling my partner yesterday, when I was a dietitian, I talked about healthy eating all day long. So what did I do? I ate healthy, right? Now that that's not my focus anymore. I mean, I still eat well, but not as well as I used to. It's
Mm,
it's easy to get off that path. So as if it's something, if it's in your head every day, then you're more likely to stay there.
yeah, especially if like you have other people around you challenging you to
Mm.
do that thing that you want. But if you don't surround yourself with that community, it's like, I mean, yeah, you're gonna slip up a little bit. Like if you are going shopping with a friend who loves to spend their money, isn't living on a budget, just kind of wings it, it's like they're gonna bring out the spender in you.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's
That's a great
natural.
example. Great
Yeah.
example. Well, thank you, Becky. So where can people find you online if they want to connect with you?
Yeah. So FamilyWiseFinancialCoach.com is a great place to start. You can learn a little bit about me, my journey. I've got some blogs on there. And then I'm on Facebook at FamilyWise Financial Coach, and same with Instagram, where I just give money tips and motivational quotes. And it's really about, I don't know, building a community together, because we're just trying to achieve, money goals. We might have different money goals, but I mean, if you're joining me, we're just going to walk with you together as a group to help.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I'll also put your information in the show notes on my website where my listeners know where to find me, sharlagoodwin.com. So thanks so much, Becky, again, for your time. And yeah, looking forward to following your money tips.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was awesome.